Hey everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Eagle Eye Podcast, brought to you by Nissan. We're live here at Rivers Casino, Philadelphia, out by the sports book. Rube, how you doing?
Doing well.
Yeah, I'm doing well too. Dave Zangaro and Reuben Frank. It's a little strange, Rube, just to be going through the post-mortem after a loss. It's something that we haven't had to do a bunch of in the last year and a half or so. I kind of forgot what it was like a little bit.
Yeah, I couldn't even remember the name of Dave's Positivity Corner because it's been so long since. I don't think we did one after the Super Bowl, so it's been almost a year since they lost a regular season game. So, yeah, it's different for us, and it's definitely different for them.
It is. It's a strange time in the city right now because I feel like the fan anger has been a little subdued because you have the Phillies and the NLCS, and it kind of shielded the Eagles from it a little bit to start this week.
And the Sixers had a big preseason win last night over the Nets.
Yeah, people are really fired up about that.
I think that's what people are really, really stoked about.
Happy we're not going to be at the sports complex tonight. It's going to be a gym. It's going to be fun down there, though. Like, the energy is going to be wild.
Yeah, it's going to be wild. There's a soccer game at the link?
Yeah, friendly between Germany and Mexico.
We'll see how friendly that is. Flyers game, which they moved up to 6. I know we had a story on SEPTA's doing a bunch. There's a bunch of parking lots in the city are going to be open, charging $5 flat rate. There's going to be, I think, free street parking at the kiosks in Philly. So park in the city and take the Broad Street line down.
Plan ahead a little bit.
Makes sense.
We have a lot to talk about today. The Eagles dealing with a bunch of injuries. We'll kind of go through some of those, what we think might be concerning for this week, what we think might be good news, and who might be coming back. We talked to both offensive and defensive coordinator and a special teams coordinator on Tuesday, so we have some tidbits to get from them. And then we'll talk a little bit about the Dolphins. We'll save a lot of that for Thursday's pod. But, Rube, I want to start big picture here because it's a bad loss. Like, no one's saying it's not a bad loss. You go up to the Jets and you lose to a team that doesn't have Aaron Rodgers, doesn't have their top 2 cornerbacks. You turn the football over 4 times. But I think there are like buckets to put problems in. And there's a bucket for that game specifically, and I think you put the turnovers in there and some of the injuries. But then there's another bucket where it's like, okay, these are actually concerns. These are things that we've seen before. And they've kind of lingered through these wins, and now they showed up in the losses. So where are you right now?
I like the actual. You're actually illustrating. There's a bucket.
There's
here.
a bucket. I'm thinking like actual buckets.
Here.
So how do you view this team after that loss?
Yeah, no differently, because I think some of the shortcomings that we saw Sunday, we've seen. Like you said, they've just been kind of had the illusion of being maybe better than they were playing because they were winning, and there's something to be said for that because they haven't been at their best. They haven't played complete game really all year in all phases. I wasn't shocked they lost just because of that. I feel like they're not a team that can just show up and.
I think I'm still shocked they lost.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm not.
That's an inferior opponent without their best players.
Yeah. Yeah, but I felt like it was coming, and I didn't know. I mean, I thought it'd be the Rams, but I mean, it's certainly not a 17-0 type of team. I mean, they got the hardest part of the schedule still coming up, but definitely the wins have masked some pretty real issues. Some injury related, some not, and some we don't really know how much being at full strength will help, but. Certainly,
and we also don't know if they're going to get the full strength.
We don't.
That's not a given in this league. Last year was such a nice thing for them to have all the starters in the Super Bowl. I mean, that we already know that's not going to happen this year. Well, we'd assume with Avante.
Yeah. Technically, nobody's been ruled out for the Super Bowl yet, but yeah, it's bad. Now, most of the injuries aren't season-ending. So that's a good thing. We think the Eagles are going to get everybody back at some point, other than Zach McPherson and Avante Maddox are pretty much done, we think. I mean, Avante's not going to play. I just can't imagine he would. But, it used to be you went on IR, you were out for the year, and you kind of knew. Roster management must have been a nightmare back then. You had to carry a guy who's going to be out for 8 weeks, 10 weeks. But
it made inactives a lot easier.
Yeah. When you had 5 guys you knew weren't going to play. But anyway, yeah, I think I like what I saw from the defense, and I think when they're at full strength, they're going to be very good. And I think we've seen that. The pressure's really been, I think, getting a little better each week. we've seen how many different defensive backs? 15.
Insane.
It's insane.
A little scary this week.
Yeah.
A lot scary this week.
Yeah, I mean, that Dolphins team, we'll talk more about it, but, I mean, they put so much pressure on your secondary and your linebackers and everybody. But, if they get Reed Blankenship back, which is big if, we don't know. We'll learn more Wednesday when we see guys who's at practice, who's limited, who's full, and all that. But they don't have any safeties. I mean, the one healthy safety they have is Terrell Edmonds, one of those two guys. Mr. Edmonds. Justin Evans is out for another 3 weeks. Sidney Brown has missed 3 games. We don't know if he'll be back. And if he is, I mean, we've seen him play, I think, 4 career snaps at safety, 12 in the slot. So there's still a lot of question marks there. And we assume Slay's going to be back. I mean, without him, it's going to be big. But we don't know. We don't know any of these things.
Are we into injuries? Or are we still?
Yeah, I don't know. Okay. I mean, it all kind of is related. It's all kind of connected. Certainly the red zone, I mean, you go to the offense, a lot of their issues are not injury related, although obviously they missed Lane when he left the game, but I don't think he's why. Red zone, turnovers, those kind of things. I guess the second interceptions could be related to Lane because Driscoll got beat and guy hit Jalen's arm and he threw a pick, but they've got to be better on offense, and they're not that banged up where they can't function. I mean, they've got AJ, they got Devontae, they got Goddard, they got Jalen, they got Kelsey, Mulata. I mean, they're, Landon, they're close to full strength. They're missing a really good right tackle, really, really good. But there's no excuse for the performance on offense, and that's really where my concern is.
Yeah, and, I agree with you that at some point a loss was going to come. The problem is, like, the teeth of the schedule is on its way. And we saw last year they did a really good job. Now, they did lose to the Commanders, and that Commanders loss had a similar vibe to this loss to the Jets. Just a bunch of turnovers. You lose that battle, and you don't play well enough outside of that to win. Now, so some similarities, but for the most part, the Eagles have been really good about just taking care of business against inferior opponents. We saw them do that last year on the way to a number 1 seed. It obviously got a little sketchy at the end of the regular season when Jalen was hurt, but that's something that they've done really effectively, and overall the schedule is so much harder this year. So I think that's where losing that game to the Jets, like, yes, it's just one game, but not ideal, obviously, because yes, you played down to one game, but that could be a win you really need down the stretch. Yeah,
and I mean, they're going to have to make up for it by beating one of those Chiefs, Bills, Niners. I mean, they're going to have to get that win back somewhere. 18-2 going into this game against teams with a losing record, so they haven't lost. They haven't lost a lot of these. I wouldn't be surprised if the Jets finish with a winning record. I haven't looked at their schedule, but they got some talent on that team, and they know how to get the most out of a quarterback who could be overmatched, but they don't ask a whole lot of them, and it works for them because their defense is really good, and they're not at full strength either, but. It'll be interesting to see how they respond because this is certainly a huge challenge coming up, and they've got to be better on offense. I mean, this could be a shootout. You can't score 17 and be a shootout because you're going to give up some points.
Yeah, that's fair. Let's get into the injuries because we got some good news on Lane Johnson. It's nothing significant that's going to keep him out for an extended period of time. His status for this week is in question. But the fact there's even a chance he can play on Sunday is really good news. It means he's not going to miss a whole ton of time. He's so important to this team. We have all the stats. We know the Eagles are 10-22 without him since the start of the 2016 season.
And that doesn't even include Sunday.
It doesn't, which they were basically without him, but he started the game, so you can't count it, which is going to irritate me for the end of time. You
could do a stat games he didn't finish.
I could.
Let's see where that
but then I'd have
you.
to change. I'd have to do a lot more research.
It'll take you 5 minutes.
That's fair.
Anyway, I would be surprised if he plays Sunday, just because
You would be surprised?
I would be surprised if he plays, just because they seem to really, with these kind of injuries, err on the side of caution. And if he's not 100% or close to it, I mean, they just seem to bring guys back slowly. It just seems to be an organizational, and I get that, but they need him. And he wants to play. I mean, he's so tough, and the injuries he's played through in his career, especially late last year, core muscle injury, playing 3 playoff games with that at a high level. You feel like he's Superman. He could do anything, but maybe they feel like they got to protect him from himself.
Yeah, but I mean, if it's close and he can play, what percent Lane Johnson would you rather have than Jack Driscoll?
Probably get over 50.
Yeah.
And you'd be 55% Lane is going to be better than Jack Driscoll.
And they probably wouldn't play him at 55%.
Right.
You wouldn't want to risk re-injury. That's the big issue there. But yeah, we talked about it on the postgame pod. There's just such a big drop-off from Lane to Driscoll. I really do think one of the biggest on the team. Now, with that said, I think a week of preparation, Jack Driscoll will be a little bit better. And it's not just the week of preparation for him. It's the week of preparation knowing that he's going to be in there. I honestly thought the Eagles were too slow to offer him help. You saw him getting beat quite a bit. I'm not saying you got to chip every play, but you got to at least slow down the rusher on his side.
Yeah, there's no question, and I think there was a point where they wanted as many guys out running patterns as possible. They were trying to move the ball. They were kind of desperate, and they were just kind of trusted him too much. And we talked about this. I mean, he started a lot of games at all kinds of positions. He's been a good player, and he wasn't Sunday. He
didn't play well. Tough matchup.
It could be a thing where they felt like, all right, he's gonna calm down. He's gonna settle down. He hasn't played much really in a couple years.
That was his first offensive snaps of the season.
Yeah. Maybe they just thought, well, let's just run our offense and see if he kind of gets calmed down and starts playing better, but it never happened. And I agree, they were too slow to adjust.
And we should mention that on Monday, Nick Sirianni, I think, strongly hinted that if Lane can't play, it would be Driscoll. He didn't come out and say it like he did with Sua a few weeks ago, but he talked about all the confidence they have in Jack, that they've won a lot of games with Jack here and at that position, which isn't really true. They haven't been great with him at right tackle, but I think that's the way they're leaning if Lane can't play, which is, I think that after the way he played, I think it was fair to question that.
Yeah. I mean, there's no great alternative. Tyler Steen, I think played some right tackle in college, but
mostly left tackle.
Didn't get any reps at right tackle. You can start moving guys around and put Mulata at right tackle and Steen at left tackle,
or Fred Johnson at left tackle.
Big Fred at left tackle. Steen at right tackle and Fred at left tackle.
No.
Oh,
no.
I thought you were benching Jordan.
No. You would move Mulata, but then you'd have your choice of Steen or Fred Johnson, and Fred Johnson is the backup left tackle.
Yeah, that's true. He had a good camp.
I think if this was a longer term Lane injury, they'd perhaps look into that. But for if it's a game, you're not going to move pieces around.
Well, it doesn't sound like it'll be more than a game, which is good news.
Do you agree with that? Like, if it was a longer-term injury, they'd think about that?
Possibly. Stout doesn't like to change more than one position.
But he's done it.
He has done it. I think it would be Driscoll. And, and then maybe you prepare if he's really, really bad and he's handcuffing the offense, you have the next group ready.
And we've seen guys get benched at halftime. We were talking earlier today about the game Jack Driscoll, the game Andre Dillard got benched at halftime. So they've done it before. It's rare. And Driscoll's been around long enough, and he's played the position. I think he would have to be really, really awful for them to move on and then shake things up.
Yeah, it's the last thing you want to do. Because you got to get Jack enough reps during the week. So whatever plan B isn't going to get a ton of reps either. So it's not an ideal situation.
What would you do? If they know going in this week, probably, if Lane can play, great, but he doesn't need the practice reps. So
right.
You're going into the week, who would you prepare, and what would your plan be?
I prepare Driscoll to start at right tackle, and I guess my plan B would be, I guess, Mulata at right tackle, and whoever you feel better about between Fred Johnson and Tyler Steen at left tackle, probably Fred.
Yeah, I mean, he's the backup left tackle, and that's the thing. It's like we start sometimes the grass isn't always greener. Like, we don't know how that would look, what they'd be able to do with that offensive line. But this is why you have Driscoll on the team. He's the backup right tackle. And it's kind of confounding me when teams have a backup and then they don't play him. Kind of, Mario Goodrich.
Yeah.
Then why is he on the team if you're not going to play him? I know some matchups are different and they dictate different things, but there's a reason you have a depth chart, and sometimes you got to just stick with it.
Fred Johnson he started 8 games, I think, with the Bengals back in 2021 maybe. So he's played in the league. So that might be the way to go. He had a really good camp.
He did. I mean, Driscoll started more games in the league.
Yeah, that's
Driscoll
true.
started 16. He was a 4th-round pick. Fred Johnson was undrafted. So we can play that game too.
He's also 6'7", 335.
Big Fred is big.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good nickname. It's maybe not a good nickname. It's an
simple,
accurate nickname. Yeah.
Yeah, elegant nickname. Big Fred.
Yeah. Fun guy too.
He is. He's
like a Fred Johnson.
He's a trip at his locker. Like, he never stops. Mm-hmm. He's singing. He's got a nice voice. He's dancing. He's singing. He's carrying on.
He's their second best singing giant offensive lineman.
That's fair. Jordan can sing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some other injuries. We don't know a ton about this. We'll obviously learn more as the week goes on and have more for you on Thursday. But we can break it down a little bit. Darius Slay and Jalen Carter, gets me every time, missed this game. All indications late last week where it was a one-game type of thing. But obviously they'll have to get back on the field and see how those injuries kind of progress. Slay was a knee injury. Jalen Carter was an ankle injury suffered in practice. We saw Jalen Carter walking around after the game. He went to the game. He looked fine walking around. So would think with a lower ankle injury, he'll be good to go this week, and that'll be a nice help.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's huge. I mean, that wasn't the problem. I mean, they need Lane back better more than anybody.
Yeah.
But certainly having that depth against that offense, having everybody back. I mean, Slay's the huge one, just because of the pressure they put on you with Hill and Waddle.
Yeah, you need some speed back in that lineup.
Yeah. And Bradbury's, I mean, he's a nice cornerback, but he's not a speed cornerback. Mm-hmm. Josh Job's certainly not a speed cornerback.
Yeah, having Bradbury and Job out there against this offense is redundant and not good. And that's Bradbury. I thought had a great game against the Jets, but
who's their second fastest corner?
Straight line speed is probably Keely Ringo. We haven't seen him play yet.
Yeah, they might need to draft a corner, like high.
Yeah.
I mean, especially considering Slay's 32 and Bradbury just turned 30. We have to draft a corner. We'll do our draft preview. We'll probably wait a little bit till spring.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that this year, and I think Keely Ringo. It's fair to talk about him as more than a 4th-round pick. They traded a future 3 for him. He was a guy who got some first-round buzz, but it's clear that he's not ready to play because he's buried right now. And Mekhi Gardner is the guy they put at safety instead of him, and Mekhi Gardner is on the practice squad. So,
yeah, that doesn't. Has Keely gotten on the field on defense?
One snap, I believe, and it was in a kind of a unique situation where they put like all defensive backs on the field.
Oh, like Hail Mary type.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's. I mean, look, it can't be too critical of a 4th-round pick, but I mean, how many undrafted guys? How many like undrafted rookie defensive backs have played for this team? I mean, it's crazy. I mean, Rick's undrafted rookie, Garner undrafted rookie.
Well, the interesting thing, is not really that Mekhi Gardner got reps at safety, because that's more, if you want to have that project with him, fine, so be it. It was that they had Eli Ricks out there rotating with Josh Jobe instead of Keely Ringo.
Yeah.
That's the one where you go, wait a second. How did Eli Ricks get ahead of Ringo on the depth chart?
Had a better training camp.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So
other injuries, though, Reed Blankenship has the ribs. Don't know about his status, but it is important to note he had a ribs injury earlier in the season that kept him out of games. So I think you worry about that a little bit more because of it. We'll see about Ricks. Obviously, no Justin Evans. He's on IR.
And Bradley Roby.
Yeah, Bradley Roby's one we don't really know much about at all. It was a shoulder injury. They need him. I mean, it's funny, that guy they just picked up and who they just promoted from the practice squad less than a week ago, but he's an important piece to this.
Yeah, I mean, he's the only true, slot as far as, by trade. What do they say by trade? I mean, he's a slot, and the other guys are just.
Well, he's played a lot outside too.
But I mean, he's a legit slot too.
Yeah.
But Bradbury is an outside corner trying to play slot and doing fine, but you need Roby out there, because if you have Bradbury, now you start moving so many other pieces. We'll know. I mean, we'll know Wednesday who we see out there. I would think anyone who's out there Wednesday, you can kind of count on will play Sunday. Guys who are out there who are not practicing Wednesday but out there Thursday, even limited, likely to play but not a lock. Slay's a guy who could miss all week. There's certain guys who could miss all week in practice, but not many of them, and play. But we'll know a lot more when we see you guys Thursday.
Yeah. They got to make a move, right? At some point.
Yeah.
I mean, safety. It's like we can look at this and be like, yeah, they got it. They have to trade for safety.
Yeah, and even Nick said, how he's always looking to upgrade the roster. For Nick to say that, I mean,
did you catch my question to Sean Desai today?
I'm not sure.
I asked him about the process between the pro scouting staff.
Oh yeah.
Howie and him.
Yeah.
And he said they bring him names and they go look at them, they work them out. Obviously, that's for guys who they would sign. And we've seen that process with Roby, but I think there's a good chance of trading for a safety. I think that's the one spot you look at with this roster and think you just need defensive backs. And there are some big name guys out there.
Yeah.
But some of those names make sense.
Well, I think, first of all, with Justin Evans, I mean, eventually he'll come off IR, but can you even count on him staying healthy? I mean, he's missed something like 70 games over the last 4 years.
Even at their best, can you trust the safeties?
That's true, too. I mean, if they're all healthy, you still wonder. But, I mean, Justin Evans, I mean, he missed 3 years in a row, and he's now had two separate injuries that have cost him games this year. Edmonds is not that good. Sydney's doesn't seem like they believe he's ready. And that leaves Mekhi Garner, who's not a safety and is an undrafted rookie. He's not even on the team. And Reed Blankenship. So, yeah, even if everyone's healthy, they need a safety.
Yeah, and like we can speculate the names. We know they're out there, like the Justin Simmons, Jeremy Chin. Everyone wants Buda Baker. He's on IR right now, but I think you can trade for players on IR.
I think so
these days. Doesn't seem like a super long-term injury. So there are guys out there, and you know how he's always going to be involved looking. What would you be willing to trade away for any of those players? Like, what do you think the level is that he would be willing?
They're going to get a lot of comp picks. Mm-hmm. So I'd give up a 4 for Jeremy Chin. Might take a 3. Mm. He was a 2.
That doesn't matter.
A few years ago. No, it doesn't matter. But if I could get him for a 4, I'd do it today.
Yeah, I think a 3 is as high as they'd go.
Yeah.
And that's kind of been the history. So what, like Quinn was a 4, Jay Ajayi was a 4, Jannard Avery was a 4.
What's his name was
Golden
a 3.
Tate was a 3.
Golden Tate was a 3.
Am I missing anyone
That's
recently?
It. Those are the main guys.
Yeah.
Golden Tate was a 3. Was that worth it?
No.
For that touchdown in Chicago?
No, because he didn't even know the play.
But he caught it.
I know. It's a weird thing. So you can argue that it was worth it because of that. But do you think Howie's more or less likely to make a trade with a third-round pick after Golden Tate?
I don't think so. I don't think that he thinks that way.
Oh, I asked more or less, and you said I don't think so. You don't think
I thought you said.
at all?
I didn't hear you say more or less.
Yeah.
I thought you said, "Is he less?"
Is he more or less?
I don't think it changes. I don't think he looks at it that way. I think if he thinks, Simmons or Chin or whoever it is worth a 3, I think he'll do it. I think he's also confident in his ability to generate draft picks. Also, and I mean, he's never sold short on draft weekend. He always has plenty of ammo. So he knows how bad they need a safety. Maybe 2 safeties. One starting caliber, maybe another safety. But Yeah, I think he's going to be aggressive. I mean, this is look. They're 5-1. They share the best record in the league, and they don't have safeties. So you're not going to find a guy on the street at this point. You're not going to find a. I mean, they've gotten lucky with like Zach Cunningham on the street, wasn't in camp, and Roby, who wasn't in camp, but was on the street. I don't know if you can keep finding a guy like that.
They found 2 last year, defensive tackles.
They did. Older guys who would, so it's maybe safety's different. I mean, if you're the same age as Linval and Sue and a safety, I don't know. I mean, are there any safeties that just retire? I don't know. I mean, but I'm sure he's going to be aggressive. I'm sure he's going to bring somebody in, whether it's a trade, signing a guy in the street. I mean, he just needs safeties.
Yeah. All right, let's take a little break.
Maybe he'll bring in 2 like he did with those 2 guys.
Same day. I like that.
Or I think it was 1 day apart.
Well, basically the same.
Same day.
All right, let's take a little break. We'll talk about some offensive stuff and some defensive stuff from the coordinators after that.
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we've got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store and nissanusa.com today.
Catch all the sports action and more at Rivers Casino Philadelphia. Whether it's the money line or the pass line, there's something for everyone in a great sports book. Rivers Casino Philadelphia. Philly loves a winner. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, Rube, we had a chance to talk to Brian Johnson, Sean Desai, Michael Clay on Tuesday. Let's start with the offense. Brian Johnson, I think he's the one who's under fire the most right now for some of his decision-making and play calling in that game. First off, what did you make of the job he did on Sunday, and what did you make about some of his comments about that today?
Well, first of all, I think he's done some good things this year. I mean, they are the number 2 offense in the league, so they've done some good things. Obviously, red zone's been poor, but they've moved the ball, so I've seen some encouraging things. Obviously, he has a ton of talent, too. I didn't like the way he called the game in a lot of ways Sunday. I just think when you have this kind of running game, you dial it up. You don't abandon it after, 5 carries. Don't go anywhere in the first quarter. This team thrives on running clock, running the ball, wearing down the other team. And when they don't do that, when they don't even try to do that, I think it hamstrings them. So I thought that was a problem. You asked him about the ratio. He said he was happy with it. And he said, the running backs caught, 9 balls? I think Swift had 8. Gainwell might have caught 1. And they each dropped 1, too. So they threw to the backs more than they have in years. And those are kind of like running plays. They're 5, 6, 7-yard gains.
I think he includes like the screens also as extensions of the run game. We saw the Goddard screen that didn't work, and then one that did.
Yeah. But I still think there's room for more than 14 carries by the running backs when you have this kind of group. And again, I would mix in Boston. I would mix in Gainwell a little more. I just think that it works better when it's not just Swift, and then maybe Boston gets 2 carries and then Swift. But that seems like a philosophical thing. I mean, they're just going to roll with DeAndre Swift, and look, he's having a good year. The end of the game, it's hard to know exactly what was a play call and what was Jalen trying to hit a grand slam.
Yeah, and sometimes the option plays muddy it a little bit. But honestly, sometimes they use that stuff as a crutch when they talk about the ratio.
Right, exactly. But I do think, and the more and more I thought about it, Sunday, you run the ball and punt. I mean, there are 2 scoring drives. The Jets' 2 scoring drives in the second half of that game were, I think, 16 yards and 8 yards?
Yeah.
I think, something like that. And the 8 yards wasn't even a real drive. They weren't even trying to stop them. So I trust that defense. I think I was at the point where I trust that defense more than I trust that offense.
Yeah, which is weird because that's not the way we envisioned it going. That's not the way it should be. But
that's the way the game was going.
That's the way the game was going. In general, I understand being aggressive there. I like the aggressiveness. I don't know if I love the play calls to set up that third down throw.
Sure.
And certainly Jalen can't throw the pick. It's funny with the run. I want to get back to the run pass ratio because you step back from the game and you look at the numbers and you go, man, that's probably out of whack. During the game, I got it. I kind of understood it. They were without their corners. I felt like in this game, though, Brian Johnson just never found the thing that worked. In the last couple of games, he found it, and they hammered it home. And in this game, it just felt like it was out of rhythm. And I think some of that was the pressure, especially from the right side of the offensive line. But also, I thought the Jets did play well. Mm-hmm. I thought their line especially played well, and it covered up some of the deficiencies in the secondary. But I think I agree with your point in general that the run pass was out of whack. I didn't think it was as egregious as you might.
Yeah, I did, and I thought they finally dialed up at the end of the game and got some good runs. But I just thought it was too late. I just think with this O-line, even without Lane, and he was in the game he was still in the game when Brian abandoned the run. I think they can wear out any defense if they hammer it, and I get that. And I asked him about this today. I mean, the first 5 runs went for -2 yards or something, and there was a -7 in there and a -6,
which has been rare, honestly.
Really,
this team doesn't have a lot of negative runs this year.
Yeah. Well, the one was the pitch to Boston was just. I mean, it just wasn't going to work. The other one was Swift, but. I just think you don't just stop doing it. And from that point, I have to look at the numbers. I mean, 5 of the runs out of their 14 were really early, and then 4 were at the very end. So, I mean, there was a point where they probably threw it 40 times and ran it 4 times. I'd have to add up the numbers, but I just think it's a tough way to win, and it's a tough way. I don't think it makes the best use of their personnel.
Yeah, and we've seen these games before from some Eagles teams. Going back to Doug, I mean, I'll never forget. We're chatting with Doug one time about, I guess maybe it was Mike Leach's offense, or the first time he saw it, he's like, yeah, they didn't run the ball at all. And someone was like, joking. I think it was me. I was like, yeah, you probably liked that, didn't you? But we've seen that tendency at times.
I'll never forget a game in Cincinnati where the Bengals had the number one pass defense, number 32 run defense. And, you're right on the river there, and it was windy. It was a cold, windy day, and Andy threw 60 times and ran 4 times. and that might have been a game they tied. But I mean, I'm not one of those you got to run the ball all the time guys. I'm really not. I love their passing game. They have so much talent. But I just think you mix it in, and you don't just stop doing it.
Yeah, and it's a fair point. I was glad we got the chance for him to at least explain his thought process on it. The other thing I wanted to hit on in this game, he was asked about Jalen's pocket awareness a couple of different times. I thought, at least my view of it, I thought he was very good early in the game. I thought he had good pocket awareness, and as the game went on, I thought it deteriorated, and I think some of that was because of the pressure he had been feeling, and it leads to, honestly, the interception, because he doesn't set his feet. He's flowing backwards. He doesn't go through and see the full picture, and he doesn't step into the throw. Brian?
Yeah, he didn't look off. I mean, I'm going to throw it there.
Yeah.
Everyone
he locked in, and he threw off his back foot with his body sideways. It was not a great throw. What was your take on that? And what was your take on what Brian said? He thought he had good pocket awareness in that game.
Yeah, I agree with you. And look, he got hit a lot too. Mm-hmm. And that'll do it. I mean, if you keep getting hit snap after snap, and Jack Driscoll's just whiffing on guys, you're gonna want to get rid of the ball as fast as you can. And but yeah, I didn't think I thought as the game went on, his pocket awareness was not great. It's understandable why, but made some good runs off it, and I don't know. I think what you said earlier is really accurate. I mean, whether it's Jalen or Brian or Nick, the whole offense just never really. I mean, they had the one drive to start the game, was 19 plays or whatever. It was great, and then they just never felt like they were clicking after that. And Jalen seemed off. The play calling seemed off. Everything but AJ seemed off. The protection was definitely off. Yeah, that's unusual for this team.
Yeah, I mean, not entirely unusual at times this year. Well, I know the numbers say they've been a very good offense, but there have been moments where it hasn't looked the way it looked last year, quite frankly.
Yeah, but you remember early last year they weren't scoring 35 a game. That kind of came later. I think they've scored one more point than they had through 6 games last year. And considering last year at this point they were 6th in red zone, and this year they're 20. I think they're up to 23rd. It tells you that if they could just be like average in the red zone, they'd be scoring another like 6 points a game. They'd be close to 30. So the points are there. I mean, the points are there to be scored. They're moving the ball like a 30-point per game team. They're just not finishing. And I think that's something different. I think more of it's execution and play calling, honestly.
Okay.
I don't feel like the play calling in the red zone's been bad.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't think it's been good.
I think for the most part it's been fine. I mean, you can pick a couple plays, but there have been penalties, there have been turnovers.
I agree it's not all on one element, but I wouldn't say the play calling in the red zone has been good either.
And the other thing, and you take away those 2 drives where they weren't trying to score in the red zone, that helps the numbers too. And also they've had a lot of red zone drives that, you have 1st and 10 on the 19, your chances of scoring are lower than if you have, first you start the drive on the 3 or something, I guess. But, I mean, I feel like it's going to come. I feel like they're going to get better. They should be better in the red zone. So I just think it's going to get better. I could be wrong.
I mean, yeah, I think you're right that it will get better because the offense, like they're moving the ball. And ultimately they have a lot of talent. So that's going to cover up some of those issues. Is there anything from Brian Johnson or Sean Desai that we didn't talk about that you think we need to?
Sean Desai said it, facing the Miami offense will be fun.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to get a lot of sleep this week.
Yeah, they're really fast and explosive. I like the fact that he's not, shying away from the challenge. But no, I like that. Brian was pretty accountable about how the offense played. He better be after making us wait 40 minutes or whatever until he came in, because they had longer meetings, which I get. And he was accountable, and
Was he?
I thought so.
Okay.
Yeah. We know we have to be better. I know I have to be better. That kind of thing. Maybe that's paraphrasing, but I sense that you didn't.
No, I a little bit. He did defend some stuff though, which isn't like I'm not saying he doesn't have that right to defend some.
He's going to defend particular plays. Like he'll never, like Sean Desai will say, like I made a bad call there. Like he'll, it's just a bad.
What'd
call.
you make of Nick taking ownership for Jalen's second interception? The obviously a lot of blame on Jack Driscoll there. He doesn't get beat cleanly around the edge. It was Jermaine Johnson. He took him wide, and then Jermaine on the step by Jalen got him. It was a long developing play. It was a 5-step drop, I believe, on a 1st and 10.
Yeah.
I don't have the tape yet, so I haven't seen the full picture of it. But I think Sirianni talked about the design of that play, and I'm guessing it was because it was a slow developing play.
I think that's what he was saying. Yeah, and that's the point when you have Jack Driscoll, and I don't know if you want any slow developing plays. It's not a knock on him. He's a backup. He's a backup right tackle against a pretty loaded defensive front who hasn't played much in 2 years.
And it wasn't like that was not his worst snap.
Oh, no.
It was he stopped him initially. Kind of.
I'd have to see it again. I don't think I saw a replay of his work on that play, but
yeah, well, there weren't many replays during that broadcast, apparently.
Yeah.
Heard it was a little rough.
Yeah, it was. And it's tough when you're in the studio and you're watching the TV broadcast and, like, there's this huge play and you never see a replay. And, like...
That's the thing people forget when you have everyone makes a big deal about the broadcasters when you have, like, the C or D broadcasters, but all the resources aren't the same as when you have the top guys too.
Cameras.
It all goes together, so you really feel it when you don't have the replays.
And I mean, at like a Monday night game or like the Eagles, Dolphins game, well, there'll be 30 cameras there. And they were saying that the last Chiefs game, they played Thursday night last week, like there were 30 cameras and like 20 of them were trained on Taylor Swift. So there wasn't a whole lot for the game itself. But how much of a difference do you think it'll make that Jack will get all the reps, assuming Lane doesn't play, that if he gets all the reps? Because, I mean, Lane's not going to practice. I wouldn't think. Maybe Friday we'll see him out there. Maybe earlier. But if Jack does have to play, how much will getting reps help him?
It'll help. Won't hurt. Yeah, it'll help. He hasn't played next to Sua a bunch, so it'll help. But I honestly think it'll help the offensive game plan more than it'll help him.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's a good point. I think they didn't really...
It's such a luxury to have two tackles for the last like 3 decades in the city where you can just trust for the most part. There have been some hiccups here and there, obviously, but to have tackles that you can just trust to be on an island and know that they're going to take care of their job. Like, you look around the league and offensive line play is bad. Like, there are some bad tackles that are playing a lot in this league.
It's true. No, that's true, and I think Nick was too slow. Whether it's Nick or Brian, a combination to. I mean, I think the what's the word? The inclination is, all right. Lane's out, Jack's in, but let's just run the offense, and we don't need to change anything. Jack's played a lot of football. We trust him, and it just didn't work.
Yeah. Defense, real quick. Sean Desai was asked about the linebacker rotation.
Yeah.
Didn't say it was just because Nakobe was coming back from the injury, which I talked to Nakobe after the game, and he talked about, he was on a snap kind of pitch count because of the foot injury. Desai made it seem like they might kind of roll with the rotation for a little bit.
Yeah, he said that, and then I followed up to kind of clarify, and he basically said, I said, was it more this is going to be the rotation moving forward, or just until Nakobe gets his sea legs and can play a full complement of snaps? And he seemed to indicate we have 3 guys. They all have skill set, and we're going to try to get the most out of all of them.
It's a tricky position to rotate.
Sure is.
Just from a communication standpoint, it can be tough. That's the bigger concern to me than the level of actual play from the linebackers. It's about you're already having all these moving pieces in the secondary because you can't keep guys healthy. Now you're going to add more to that because you think, I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze there.
Interesting. You ever see the High Line go through West Philly, the train line on the old trestle, built in 1903? Every morning.
People don't know this about you, that you're a bit of a train nerd.
Yeah, a little bit. So the High Line it actually starts out near South Philly. Well, it goes through South Philly, and then it goes right across like Market and Chestnut and Walnut in West Philly near Penn and Drexel, and it's on a trestle that was built in 1903. It's the oldest trestle of its type, and you can see it from 30th Street Station, from all over Penn's campus, Drexel's campus, and every morning the orange train goes through. There's like 100 Tropicana train cars bringing oranges up to the Northeast.
For a second there, I thought you were talking about the train was just the color orange. And I thought that is the weakest connection ever, but there are actually oranges on it.
Yeah. And I assume orange juice, or I don't know if it's just, oranges that haven't been.
Is it coming or going? Is it going to the factory or leaving the factory?
At the end of the day, the orange truck goes back south.
Okay.
Yeah. I've spent days just watching. It's actually trained. There's like people that just watch trains. They take pictures of trains. Train spotters. And that area you have the freight lines on the other side of the.
Do you do that?
No, I don't do that.
Not yet. We should say not yet.
Not yet. So there's the freight line that goes, where Schuylkill Banks is? They built that, like, the trail. It's beautiful, like, along the river.
I don't, but sure.
Goes through Center City. They built a trail. They're actually extending it. There's running trail, jogging, bicycles, skateboarders. You see hundreds of people on there. From WIP, it's like right under our studio. And so you have the freight line there. Then you have the High Line right across the river. And then you have the Amtrak Northeast Corridor, which has, SEPTA and Amtrak. That's going by just below right next to the river, right next to the expressway. And then you have the train line going from like Center City across the Schuylkill into 30th Street station. So you have 4 separate train lines, all within half a mile. So what the train spotters try to do is they try to get a train on each line at the same time and get a picture of that. Thanks for watching today's Eli podcast. For Dave Zangaro and Reuben Frank. Wait a minute, we're not quite done. I'll stop talking about trains.
We good on that? All right.
And then
Anything from Michael Clay?
And then the subway goes right.
I thought he was really detailed about the coaching points on Keely Ringo on that penalty. I know this is like really
he was
inside
incredibly
baseball stuff,
detailed.
but it was really good stuff about how he thinks that the returner kind of baited him into that penalty.
That was interesting.
And how he has to kind of learn.
On a short punt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was really good stuff that no one probably cares about, but
I'll tell you what, more people care about the trains than...
I don't know. It's Keely Ringo, so people care about him.
But the point wasn't really about Keely. It was about just short punt returns and, or short punts.
Exactly.
Speaking of short punts, I asked him about Braden Mann.
Well, I think he's actually been all right.
You think he's been better than Aaron Sipos?
Yeah.
No. I don't think so. I just don't think he's been consistent.
He hasn't been consistent. I think he's been a little better. The punts he's pinned down deep have been deeper.
That's fair.
He hasn't really had a ton of opportunities to launch one yet. When he's had them, he hasn't made the most of it.
Why is it so hard to find a punter?
I don't know. It's a little strange. Maybe there's just not enough punters. There's more teams than high-level punters. I think once you get past what is it, like 15 to 20, you're kind of they're all in the same boat.
Maybe.
Yeah. And the Jake Elliott kick, he just missed it. It happens.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
That dude's built up enough equity over the years that you don't worry about it too much, but it was a big miss in that game.
It was.
We don't have a ton of time here, but the Dolphins, we'll get into this Thursday. They're a really tough team. The number one offense in the league by every metric you want to look at, regular stats, advanced stats, passing, running, they are a juggernaut. You brought up the point with me before the pod started. They haven't really played a really tough schedule yet. Their wins are against the Chargers, the Patriots, the Broncos, the Giants, the Panthers. The one loss they have, they got slapped around by the Bills 48-20.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how good their defense is. I think they're okay.
They have some players on that side.
They do have some players.
Xavier Howard's good. They have some pretty good pass rushers. Christian Wilkins, the defensive tackle, is very good. I'm a big fan of Jalen Phillips. I know he's been banged up.
Yeah.
He's the type of player who give these tackles fits.
Yeah, it's a tough game, but I mean, when you look at the Dolphins, the thing you look about is their speed on offense. They don't have A-Chin. A-Chan. He keeps changing his name on us.
He only changed it once. It was A-Chan, A-Chan.
His 12.1 yards per carry, but they do have former Eagle Raheem Mostert. He's got 11 touchdowns already. Mm-hmm. When he's healthy, I mean, he's just so dangerous. And obviously Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Waddle doesn't have big numbers. But if Slay's not out there, I mean, and he
does have 11 touchdowns already.
Yeah, Mostert's got 11 touchdowns, a lot of big, long touchdowns.
Holy cow!
I mean, he's a weapon from anywhere on the field. That's why when they had both those backs, I mean, they were just unstoppable.
That's unbelievable. He has 11 touchdowns.
He has 11 touchdowns in 6 games. Former Eagle.
Jeez.
So, for those of you who don't know the story, Raheem Mostert he made the team in 14, or they put him on the practice squad. The Dolphins signed him off the Eagles practice squad. And then he went to 6 teams and got cut. And then he finally got a chance to play with the Niners, and now he's with the Dolphins. But he
made some plays with the Niners, too.
He did. He was leading. He had the most yards from scrimmage in the NFL in the preseason when he was with the Eagles.
Yeah, I remember that.
So you could tell he was good, but I can't remember who they kept instead of him.
What year was that?
It was 14, maybe. You going to go to the roster moves from 14?
I was going to look at the roster.
Yeah, it was. I think it was the same year. I think Henry Josie had a big preseason. Might have been the year after that, but he's a weapon. And Tua is just playing otherworldly. I mean, he led the NFL in passer rating last year, and he's at 114 now. He's got 14 touchdowns in 6 games. He's thrown for almost 2,000 yards. He's completing 71% of his passes. He's thrown 5 picks. It's a little high, but he's throwing like 50 times a game. And why wouldn't you with that kind of talent around you? I mean, Tyreek Hill's already got 814 yards. I mean,
pretty amazing.
So they have playmakers everywhere. I mean, they'll throw to Mostert. They'll throw to Barrios. It's going to be a challenge.
So it was 2015. The Eagles had DeMarco Murray, Ryan Matthews, Darren Sproles, and Kenyon Barner.
Oh, Barner. They kept Barner instead of, yeah, and he didn't have a bad year. Chip like Barner, Oregon, right? I think Barner might have had a return touchdown that year. That was 15.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, it's fun offense. They're averaging almost 500. Now, look, the Denver game kind of skewed all the stats.
Yeah.
Because you score 70 points, but they're averaging 30.
They scored 70 and let up.
They did. They're averaging 38.8 points per game.
Insane.
So even without the 70, I mean, what's 38.8 times 6 minus 70 divided by 5? So they're averaging 33 even without that game. They're averaging 500 yards a game. I mean, it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, 42 last week against the Panthers. That game started off 14-0 Panthers, and then I look up and it was just a blowout the other way. They can put points on you in a hurry. And with this secondary, that is certainly the biggest matchup of this game to watch. But the way you mitigate that is you get into his face all game, and you just hope the defensive line can make the game a nightmare for him.
And the one thing you notice, like the 70 points was at home, the 42 against Carolina was at home, the 31 against the Giants was at home. On the road, they scored 20 in Buffalo, 24 against the Patriots, 36 against the Chargers. But this offense is not quite the same on the road.
That's fair.
Yeah.
All right. Are we good there?
Yeah. I was going to tell you about the trolleys.
I'd prefer if you didn't.
Okay. If you want to hear about the trolleys, just
Cowboys won on Monday night.
Yeah.
I thought they were going to lose that game and help the Eagles out. They did not. They ended up pulling that one out.
Dak played well. Mm-hmm. Dak actually made some big throws.
I didn't watch much of it. I was flipping back and forth and mostly watching the Phillies game.
I was mostly watching the Sixers preseason game against the Nets.
That's sicko stuff. That's crazy.
Why?
Because there's an NLCS game and
I watch parts of everything. I try to. I don't want to spread myself too thin, so I watched a little bit of everything.
Okay, that's fair. All right, that's it.
Kelly Oubre, big game.
We want to.
Ben's just going to cut off my mic.
If you guys can, please go ahead, rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, click the like button and subscribe there as well. We appreciate all those great reviews. We read them, and we do take constructive criticism, sometimes well, sometimes not so well. That's it. For Rube, I'm Dave. This has been Eagle Eye presented by Nissan Live here at Rivers Casino, Philadelphia. We'll talk to you soon.